The matriarch of the Vance family, the woman I'd called Mother for 10 agonizing years, stood before me, her face a mask of cold desperation. Her words weren't a request, they were a command, each one a stone meant to build the walls of my new prison. "You will do this for us, Alara," Isabella Vance said, her voice leaving no room for argument. "After all we've given you, a roof over your head, a place at our table, you owe us. You'll go to that man, you will play the part of his long-lost sister, and you will secure this deal for the family." Owe them? I owed them for the scraps from their table? For being a shadow to their perfect daughter, Serafina? For a decade of being their living, breathing reminder that I was second best? My heart hammered against my ribs, a desperate bird in a cage. But when my voice finally came, it was just a whisper. "Yes, Mother." And so, here I am, walking into the sleek, impossibly tall headquarters of Blackwood Enterprises. Each step on the marble floor echoes the lie I'm about to tell. I was their puppet, their secret weapon, the last desperate gambit to save their crumbling empire. But they made one fatal mistake. They sent me to the one man whose cold gaze could burn my world down. My fake brother, the CEO I was never, ever supposed to fall for. Damian Blackwood. Living with the Vances was like being the ghost in their palace. The mansion was opulent, filled with light and laughter that never seemed to touch me. I was a footnote in their family history, a story they told themselves about their own generosity. My purpose was simple: exist in the background, be a quiet companion to their precious biological daughter, Serafina. I'll never forget my 16th birthday. The Vances threw a lavish party for Serafina, whose birthday was only a week after mine. That morning, Isabella handed me a small, plainly wrapped box. Inside was a simple silver bracelet. "Happy birthday, Alara," she'd said, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. Later that night, I watched as they presented Serafina with a brand new convertible, the crowd roaring with applause. I just stood in the corner, clutching my bracelet, the chill of the silver seeping into my skin. It wasn't the lack of a car that hurt, it was the chilling clarity of my position. I was an obligation, she was a celebration. That pretty much defined my entire existence. If Serafina failed a class, I was tasked with helping her study. When she passed, the credit was all hers. When she broke an antique vase during a tantrum, my allowance was docked to pay for it, a silent punishment I had to accept without complaint. I was her shadow, her scapegoat, her stand-in. My life was a collection of borrowed clothes and reflected glory. The illusion of their perfect world started to crack a few months ago. It began with whispers, hushed, panicked conversations between Isabella and her husband Marcus behind heavy oak doors. Words like bankruptcy, foreclosure, and ruin drifted through the heavy oak like phantoms. The Vance family fortune, built on risky investments, was collapsing like a house of cards. It all came to a head at dinner. The crystal and silverware gleamed under the chandelier, mocking the grim atmosphere. Marcus, usually so detached, looked pale and haggard. "It's over," he announced into the silence. "The banks are calling in our debts. Everything is on the line." Isabella's face was stone. "There is one last chance. Blackwood Enterprises. Their CEO, Damian Blackwood, is looking to acquire a partner. A deal with him would save us, but he's impossible to get to. He's ice and iron. No one gets a meeting without a personal connection." Serafina, who'd been scrolling on her phone, looked up, a cruel smirk playing on her lips. She looked right at me. "Well," she began, her voice dripping with venom, "we do have a personal connection, don't we? Or at least we have someone who can pretend to be one." That's when they unveiled their monstrous plan. They'd hired private investigators and dug into Damian Blackwood's past. They found out he had a younger sister, lost in a tragic accident 2 decades ago. Her body was never found,
leaving just enough ambiguity for them to shove me through. They spent a small fortune on forged documents, a fake backstory, even a replica of a locket his sister supposedly wore. They laid it all out for me on the mahogany desk, the fake birth certificate and doctored photos spread out like instruments of torture. "You look enough like the old photos of her," Isabella stated, her eyes scanning me like a chess master assessing a pawn. "We've created a compelling story. You were found, raised by a modest family, and have only just discovered your true identity." "It's the least you can do," Serafina chimed in, leaning against the doorframe while inspecting her manicure. "If it weren't for us, you'd still be a street rat. It's time to repay your debt." I looked at their faces. Isabella's desperate ambition, Marcus's weak compliance, Serafina's undisguised contempt. Rage and disgust churned inside me. I wanted to scream, to throw their lies back in their faces and just walk out forever. But where would I go? They had been my whole world, however cruel. A twisted sense of duty, a survival instinct I'd learned over 10 years, warred with my pride. They had me cornered. To save themselves, they were willing to sacrifice me to a man they called a monster. And I, the ghost of their house, was about to become the ghost of another family entirely.
The elevator ride to the top floor of Blackwood Enterprises felt like a silent ascent into my own personal hell. The Vances had coached me for hours, drilling the fake details of my past into my head until my own memories felt foggy. "Remember to tremble slightly," Isabella had instructed. "Look at him with hope, but also with fear. Men like him enjoy feeling powerful." The doors opened onto a reception area that was more art gallery than office, vast, silent, and minimalist. At the far end, a severe-looking assistant nodded at me. "Mr. Blackwood will see you now." His office was just as soul-crushing. A single, colossal desk sat before a floor-to-ceiling window with a godlike view of the city. And behind that desk sat the god himself, Damian Blackwood. He didn't look up when I entered. He was signing a document, his movements precise and economical. The silence stretched on, a deliberate power play. My carefully constructed composure started to fray. Finally, he capped his pen with a soft click and lifted his head. His eyes were the color of a winter storm, and they swept over me with a complete lack of emotion. He was younger than I'd expected, maybe early 30s, but he carried an aura of absolute control. He was handsome in a way that felt dangerous, all sharp angles and ice. "You have 5 minutes," he said, his voice a low baritone that sent a shiver down my spine. My throat was bone dry. I swallowed, clutching my bag. "Mr. Blackwood, my name is Alara. I believe I am your sister." The words felt like ash in my mouth. He didn't react, no shock, no surprise, just that same unnerving, analytical gaze. He gestured to the chair. "Sit." I perched on the edge of the leather seat and recited the script the Vances had given me, my voice shaking in a performance that was becoming terrifyingly real. I told him about the locket, the fragmented memories, the search that led to him. I pushed the folder of forged documents across the vast expanse of his desk. He didn't touch it. His eyes never left my face, as if he were trying to dissect me, to find the lie in my bones. When I finished, the silence returned. "An interesting story," he said, the corner of his mouth twitching, "and a convenient one. The Vance family is on the brink of collapse, aren't they? And they send a girl with a fairy tale to my doorstep? How theatrical." Panic seized me. He knew. "No," I whispered, genuine tears welling in my eyes. "It's not like that." He leaned forward. "Isn't it? My sister, Eliana, was lost 20 years ago. In all that time, nothing. Now, at the precise moment a desperate family needs my help, she miraculously reappears?" He paused, his gaze intensifying. "Let me be clear. If you are who you say you are, we'll talk.
But if this is a game, if you're a pawn for the Vances, I won't just let their company fall, I will grind it into dust." I flinched. The threat in his voice was terrifying. He finally picked up the folder and scanned the pages, his expression unreadable. He stopped at the picture of the locket. For a split second, I saw a flicker of something, pain maybe, memory, before the ice slammed back down. He closed the folder. "I'm not a sentimental man," he said coolly, "but this requires investigation. For now, you will play the part. Publicly, you are my long-lost sister. It serves a certain purpose for me at this moment." A purpose? What purpose? I was too terrified to ask. "You will move into the penthouse in this building," he continued, as if discussing a business arrangement. "You will be under my observation. We'll see if your story holds up. In return, I'll attend the Vance family's anniversary gala. I'll allow the world to see us together. That should hold off their creditors, for now." It was a deal with the devil. He hadn't believed me, not for a second, but he was going to use me, just like the Vances. I had merely traded one cage for another. He stood, signaling our meeting was over. "My assistant will show you to your new residence. Welcome home, sister." The word was a blade of ice. As I walked out, his cold, calculating eyes followed me. I wasn't his sister. I was his captive. I had just walked into a cage far more terrifying than the Vance's mansion, and its warden was the man I was supposed to be deceiving. Living in Damien Blackwood's penthouse was like living in a beautiful, sterile museum. Everything was glass and chrome and shades of gray, a perfect reflection of him. The first few days were a study in silence. We were two ghosts haunting the same space, connected only by our lie. I'd hear his expensive shoes on the marble floor as he left before dawn, and the soft click of the door when he returned late at night. We'd share awkward, silent elevator rides where I would stare at the floor and feel his gaze on me, always analyzing. I had to do something to feel less like a prisoner. One morning, I ventured into the state-of-the-art kitchen, a place so sleek and unused it looked like a showroom. I decided to make breakfast, a small act of defiance. As I fumbled with the ridiculously complex coffee machine, he walked in, dressed in another perfect suit, already on his phone. He stopped, his eyes flicking from me to the slightly burnt toast. He didn't say a word, just poured himself a glass of water and walked out. But for a split second, I saw it, a flicker of surprise, a tiny crack in the wall of his indifference. The first real crack appeared at the Blackwood Enterprises charity gala. The place was crawling with the city's elite and the press. Damien handed me a designer box. The day of the Blackwood-Vance merger announcement was thick with tension. For the Vances, it was their salvation. For me, it was the culmination of the most terrifying performance of my life. Damien stood beside me, a pillar of strength. In the hours before, he'd been different, almost gentle. He'd adjusted my collar, his fingers brushing my neck for a second too long. "Stay close," he had murmured, "for my years only." It felt less like an order and more like a promise. Damien walked to the podium, and the room fell silent. He began his speech, confident and commanding. He was about to formally introduce me, to cement the lie in front of the world. "And this new chapter for our company," he said, turning to look at me, a strange emotion in his eyes, "is also a new chapter for my family. It is with great personal joy that I welcome home my sister, Ilara Blackwood." As he said my name, the massive screens behind him flickered and died. Then they flashed back to life, showing a grainy image of a bank statement, a transfer from Marcus Vance to a known forger. A recording began to play, filling the ballroom. It was Isabella's voice, sharp and commanding. "You will cry on cue, Ilara. Do not forget the locket. It's the key." Gasps erupted. My blood ran cold. The floor dropped out from under me. This was it. The nightmare was happening. A spotlight landed on Serafina at the back of the room, a microphone in her hand, tears streaming down her face. Beside her stood Julian Thorne, a triumphant smirk on his. "She's a fraud," Serafina cried. This street urchin my family took in has been deceiving all of you, especially you, Damien." She pointed a trembling finger at me. "She did it for money, forcing my parents into this horrible lie to swindle you." The room exploded into chaos. Cameras flashed relentlessly, blinding me. Voices shouted. I saw Marcus and Isabella, their faces ashen with horror. But all I could see was Damien. He stood on the stage, frozen. I watched his face, expecting to see the ice return, the fury. I waited for him to denounce me, to cast me out and save himself. But instead, his gaze locked with mine. I was paralyzed by shame and terror. In his eyes, I didn't see disgust or betrayal. I saw a decision. He ignored his frantic board members. He ignored the clamoring press. He stepped off the stage. He walked straight past the tearful Serafina and the sneering Julian. He walked through the sea of shocked faces directly to me. The room fell silent. The only sound was the clicking of cameras. He didn't say a word. He just reached out and took my hand, his grip firm and unyielding. The world narrowed to the feeling of his palm against mine. Then he spoke, his voice low but carrying with lethal clarity. "Let's go." And, in front of his board, his investors, the press, and the world that had just witnessed his humiliation, Damien Blackwood led me, the liar, out of the room. He didn't look back. He simply walked away, leaving the scandal, the merger, and his empire burning in his wake. He had chosen me. The silence in the back of Damien's limousine was heavier than the chaos we had just escaped. The city lights blurred past the tinted windows. "Damien, I'm so sorry," I whispered, the words tumbling out. "I never wanted this. They forced me. I was going to tell you, I didn't know how." He didn't look at me, his jaw tight. I braced for the cold fury I deserved. Finally, he turned his head, his stormy eyes meeting mine. "I know," he said quietly. I stared at him. You know?" "I've known for weeks," he admitted with a weary sigh. "The locket was a good touch, but the details in your story were flawed. My investigators confirmed the forgery a month ago." My mind reeled. But why?" I stammered. "Why go along with it? Why did you do that back there? You could lose everything." He reached out and covered my hand. His touch was gentle now. "Because the lie didn't matter," he said, his voice raw with an emotion I'd never heard from him before. "What mattered was you." He moved closer. "From the moment you walked into my office, you were a complication I couldn't solve. You were this quiet, resilient, infuriating presence in my perfectly ordered life. And in all the lies, I saw a truth I couldn't ignore. I saw you, Ilara, not the fake sister, just you." He paused, his thumb stroking the back of my hand. "I didn't care about the deal. I didn't care about the Vances. I realized tonight, I only cared about not losing you." Tears streamed down my face, but they weren't tears of fear or shame. They were tears of overwhelming relief. He leaned in, and finally, with no interruptions, he closed the distance between us. His kiss wasn't rough or demanding. It was a confession, gentle and deep, filled with all the words he could never say. In the quiet darkness of the car, surrounded by the ruins of a lie, he turned the fake plot into the realest thing I had ever known. Damien acted with terrifying speed. He didn't save the merger, he dissolved it and used the market panic to buy out his opponents on the board, consolidating his power. With cold precision, he leaked evidence of Julian Thorne's illegal trading practices, ruining him. As for the Vances, their ruin was total. Their creditors descended like vultures. They lost everything. The last I heard, Serafina was a sales clerk, and their parents were living in a small rented apartment. Damien ensured they were left with nothing. Months later, the world looked brighter. I enrolled in art school, a passion the Vances had once dismissed as a frivolous hobby. My canvases were filled with color, no longer the gray of my former life. Damien was no longer the cold CEO. To the world, he was more powerful than ever. But to me, he was just Damien. He'd smile now, a real smile that reached his eyes. He'd show up at my studio with coffee, his tie loosened, and watch me paint for hours. One evening, we stood on the balcony of the penthouse that was now our home. He wrapped his arms around me from behind. I was sent to be his fake sister, a pawn in a desperate game. They threw me into a storm, hoping I would be destroyed. But they never understood storms, or the man who commanded them. In the heart of that storm, we found a truth more powerful than any lie. Our story wasn't about a merger or a family's downfall. It was about two lonely people finding their way home, not as siblings, but as soulmates. And our fiery love story was only just beginning.